Good. Okay, so Lunsford, we're live. Here's the problem: is we were just on tour together, and I meant to get an episode with you just talking about barbecue, but I just didn't feel like doing it on tour. It's just really not that fun to podcast on tour. So even though doing podcasting in person is 1,000 times better,
Yep,
it's still easier for me to get home and then Skype you from my office when I got home.
Yep.
So sorry about that.
Well, that's all good.
Don't you agree that on tour it's just impossible to do anything?
Just logistically, yeah. I mean, it's like, well, I'm out tour managing on that tour, right?
Yep.
So it's like, what do I take a break? We get to the venue, and then I got a podcast for an hour.
Yeah.
Like, you can't do it. So
no, it's really hard. We were able to keep up just barely on that, but I'm glad to be home now. But it's real hard because I'm having a hard time just figuring out if I like going on tour or don't, or if I like being at home or if I don't. I'm very confused on both of those matters.
I'm with you. I told somebody, we got home and somebody asked me to have a good time or how was tour, and I said, and Cassie was there, and I was like, no offense to Cassie or my life or family, but in a way I definitely feel almost more at home on tour in the rig. Mm-hmm. I feel more in my element, a little more comfortable. Like, okay, I know this life. I know that life better than I know my current life with kids. Because I've had kids. Had kids for 4 years, right? I've had kids for 4 years, but I've toured for 10, right? So it is still less familiar to me to be a father of 3. Well, being a father of 3 too. We have a 2-month-old, so I'm not even used to that yet. So when I came home, I had a day where like Bunda texted me about this. He's like, "Do you have post-tour stress syndrome or whatever, traumatic?" And I was like, "Dude, it's rough. Like it felt so strange, and it seemed like I needed like a day at a hotel by myself to think or decompress before I went home and saw my kids."
Yeah.
But me and Toby drove the bus home like all morning. I get home at like 2 p.m. and then you're just back at it.
Yeah, no, it's bad. It is really rough. I do think a decompression day would be ideal if you could possibly go to a hotel in town and then maybe visit your kids for a couple hours and have dinner and then go back to your hotel at least one more night. Yeah. Because with the day you get home, it just isn't a good day. You think it'd be super happy and stuff, but it is, but there's like I walk in the door and my wife's had the kids for 2 weeks or longer, however long we were out, and she's like, "Okay, dropping the reins."
Right.
When I walk in the door, and I'm walking in the door thinking, "Okay, now I'm finally home to chill out." And that ain't what happens. I mean, it's straight to it, and it's quite uncomfortable.
Yeah, there's no chill time. It's the kid, like Magnolia is 4, Buddy's 2, so I have 2 kids that are very aware that I was gone and very happy to see me.
Yeah.
And then Cassie, she likes to talk, so she talked to me for a while.
For hours and hours and hours, telling you everything that happened.
Oh, yeah, everything.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, but I do feel, I don't know if it's less responsibility being on tour is one of the things that makes it attractive. I mean, it seems like it's all rough. Everything's rough, and it's stressful, and it's hard in itself. But I really feel like I really sleep in my bunk on the bus. That's where I belong, it feels like. It really does feel that way. Like, that's my place, And not to make fun of it. I like being a part of my family, or it's my wife's house. Or my bus that's the way I think of it. As if it was my portable man cave that can live in or something like that. And I promise you, if I had that bus parked outside of our house, I would spend a lot of time in it.
We pulled up to Toby's house, and Cassie met me there to pick me up. And me and Toby sat on the bus for a minute drinking a beer. While our kids were playing in the front yard. Like, we didn't want to leave.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's weird. I like the Emory bus in particular. The bunk is more comfortable than my home bed. Like, I sleep better in it. And then I think about being on tour, the unbelievable amount of alcohol I'm able to consume and then never have a hangover and totally function the next day. So, like, there were many nights on the tour where hanging out drinking, I'm like, I'm going to feel like shit in the morning. But I wake up, back at it, and just go for it. And if I did that at home, it would ruin my life.
Yeah. Definitely. Oh, for sure. It's a totally different thing. I don't know exactly what the science is behind that, but the metabolism seems to work differently on tour.
Yeah.
I did gain a little bit of weight because of how much we eat and what we get to eat. How about you? Did you gain any weight?
For sure. 100%.
I'm having a problem with your audio on my Pro Tools, but Reva, you're getting it through at least, right? Yeah. Okay. So, and you definitely are recording your end?
Yep.
Okay. Then I'm not too worried about it then. So let's talk about food then. That's your favorite thing to talk about, huh?
Yeah, I think so. I think I just somehow I've gathered a wealth of knowledge on it where I'm able to talk about it fluently.
Do you like food better than music now?
Yeah, for sure.
No doubt about it.
No doubt. I mean, how do you figure out what you like? What do you spend time on? So, I mean, obviously we'll get to it, but I'm doing barbecue as a business now.
Yep.
But even just if I'm at home and I want to do something that I like to do, I'm not playing my drums.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to go, oh, I just got to play the drums. I'm like, oh, I want to cook something. So, because it's something that I have total control over and can make a full composition by myself, right? So just playing the drums, you're just on your own. It's just noise. So if you don't get the band together and write a song or whatever, then to me, there's not a lot of purpose. But with food, you know, you can make a full dish all the way from beginning to end by yourself. You don't need anybody else to do it, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the satisfaction, probably.
Yeah.
That just the control.
Well, you're prompted biologically to think about food many, many times a day. You know, that's right. There's something worth cultivating there because that's inescapable. It's inescapable that you're going to be drawn to food, need food, be satisfied by food, things like that. So it only makes sense to put some effort into it and not be a lazy food consumer, you would say.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I mean, that's kind of a mission. There's food writers that just want to get people to cook, you know, and take joy in that. Michael Ruhlman, who's one of my favorite writers, and he's probably the best food writer on the face of the planet. He always says that you need at least one person in your house, your family, that cares to do the cooking. It doesn't have to be everyone. You don't have to turn your family into a bunch of like little Iron Chefs or whatever, get them on TV or something. But if at least one person in your household just cares to try to cook at home and get better and do good food, then that's just so beneficial just to your overall quality of life for everyone else too.
Well,
so
I have a little bit of a challenge to that. I would have agreed with you yesterday, but I cooked last night, and it was such a disaster that I almost wanted to give up. I'll tell you what happened. In fact, I was barbecuing. Not barbecuing. In fact, we'll dissect that in a second. I was grilling, which some people say is barbecuing, but we'll get to that in a second. I'll tell you what I did. I was making flank steak tacos. So,
okay.
I'm just now adjusting to get home from tour. I said, all right, I'll make this flank steak. Bridget had the meat. It was frozen and then thawed out. And then I said, I'll make the tacos tonight. It was nice. We have our patio. Our Airbnb wasn't being used. So I said, we'll sit out there all together. Bridget filled up the kiddie pool for Georgia to play out there. And the baby's crawling around. And I was going to grill that. And Bridget was finishing up some other stuff. So I cooked this flank steak on the grill and didn't think much of it, just did what I normally do. And then meanwhile, my family fell apart. All three of them entirely fell apart during the stress of me trying to cook, which means I couldn't help do anything else. And Bridget was wrapping up work, and the baby's crying, and Georgia's getting wet and all kind of making all kind of trouble back there. And then so we're having all these problems, and then the schedule gets off, which is a horrible thing about grilling or cooking, when some things are done and some things aren't done, and wasn't enough space on my grill for the corn. I didn't have enough coals, so I just ran into some jams, and then they started melting down. And this is what always almost happens: is Bridget will get frustrated to the point where when the food is hot and ready to eat, she's won't come sit down and eat. So then eventually me and Georgia just sit down to eat, and Bridget's cleaning up something or dealing with a baby who had to be put to sleep inexplicably at 6:15 last night. I don't know why. And so the meal's not turning out good at all. And then, I'm not kidding about this, I got the meat, finally got it off the grill, had it at the right temperature. I had it right at about 130, and it was looked pretty good. And then I tasted it, and I think the meat had just already gone bad.
Like,
The meat had gone bad before I cooked it. Like it was already basically turned in the first place before I so it was a failed endeavor from the get-go. And so I don't know if it had sat too long before it was frozen or if it sat too long after it thawed, but whatever. I don't even like frozen meat that much anyway, but all that trouble, all that mess. Family melted down. The meat was I mean, we ate some of it, but not much.
You ate it?
A little
You
bit.
didn't get sick?
No, but it's not I don't think it makes you sick like that. It's just you could
Okay.
tell it started to smell a little. It just smelled a little bit funny, and
Yeah.
it clearly had gone to some degree bad. But you know, it was just a little bit. We used some of the well done parts in the taco, and not much.
Yeah.
He didn't eat much of it, and threw 2.5 pounds of flank steak away after that.
Yeah.
So
I don't find that frozen beef to me is harder if you're trying to do steak like that. If it's like stew or something, maybe that kind of goes away. But if you're trying to do like a medium rare steak, I don't know. Sometimes it just doesn't work well for me.
So I grill on a Weber kettle for the most part. I do have a smoker that I use, and I am actually pretty good at grilling despite the many failures I have, and time management being the main one. But the temperature and the heat and managing that and the meat itself and the marinade and the technique, I think I'm decently pretty good at. But, you know, it happens from time to time that I fail. But what do you like to cook on? And first of all, how about that question before? How do you differentiate or define barbecue? Because that's what's most interesting to me.
So in America, barbecue, really, I think to people, especially from the South, barbecue means smoked meat. So even in some parts of the South, I mean, you know this, some parts of the South, barbecue would be synonymous with pulled pork, smoked pulled pork or chopped pork.
Yeah.
Like
when I grew up, if somebody says barbecue, they mean we are eating pulled pork with sauce, probably on a sandwich. It's not a method of cooking or at least it's so focused in South Carolina where I'm from that I thought that meat is called barbecue. That specific dish is called barbecue.
Well, and I think I don't use barbecuing as a verb.
Okay.
To me, barbecue is a noun. It is the finished product.
Yes. Okay.
So obviously, you go from region to region. In Texas, barbecue is brisket, and they do other stuff. In Tennessee, barbecue is mostly pulled pork, and then even.
So you take issue with people using barbecue as a verb or a thing that you do outside.
Yeah, I don't like that. I think that's grilling out. That's cooking out.
Yeah.
It implies something that doesn't make sense to me, even if it is on a barbecue grill, you could call it that. And I don't know, it doesn't really, because of the way we grew up with barbecue meaning a specific thing, it's confusing. So when I moved to California and Cassie and her friends, they'd say, hey, we're having a barbecue.
And they cook hamburgers on the grill.
Yeah. And I'm like,
hot dogs,
oh, you're cooking out.
Yeah, definitely.
But we have a fast food chain devoted to that. Cook out. Yeah. Right? So it's a regional thing. I mean, West Coast people don't get it. New England people don't get it. Like, I don't know how to, and they don't listen either.
They don't listen at all. They think you're a dumb Southerner redneck. Why are they going to listen to you?
I don't know. So it's an uphill battle when it comes to that, and they'll probably never stop saying barbecue. And I just wish they would say cooking out or grilling out. It sounds better to me and makes more sense because, if you say we're having barbecue or we're barbecuing, to me, you're implying you're smoking some food.
Yes.
Some meat, right? So that's what I think it is. And that's what, most people that know anything about barbecue will agree. So for America anyway.
So but you do include that broadly to be brisket, pulled pork, chopped pork, smoked chicken, all that kind of stuff.
I don't give a shit about the regional stuff or regional. All right, here's my pet peeve. Somebody walks up to my barbecue stand and they're like, what do you got? And I'm like, well, I got brisket and pulled pork. Oh, you're brisket. Well, I'm from Texas. I'm from Texas. So, I'm like,
what's the implication? That it better be good because I'm from Texas.
Yeah, know, but most people don't know. Now, there's a lot of good barbecue in Texas, but if I'm talking to somebody, unless they start dropping names of joints that are known, then I will assume that maybe you might not have ever had good brisket. Yeah. Some people from Texas think that they go to, is it Dickie's or something like that? Who knows?
Right, Dickie's just chain, whatever.
Yeah. So people, and they do, Kansas City people do, I'm from Kansas City, so, So I only like that type of barbecue. And I'm just like, does it fucking taste good in your mouth or not? Yeah. That's literally the only thing that matters to me.
So you don't eat pulled pork, right? Because you're from Kansas City? I mean,
what are you talking about? Peg Leg Porker, which is a very, very successful barbecue joint here in town, very
in
good.
Nashville.
In Nashville, insane dry rub ribs. They they got a Yelp review recently, and it was a guy saying he gave them like a 1 star because they don't serve burnt ends in brisket.
Yeah.
They don't even make it, and so he gave them.
He got him a bad review for what they don't have.
Yeah. But I mean, Tennessee peg leg. He is from outside Memphis, and he maintains this. Hey, we do Tennessee barbecue, which Tennessee barbecue is pork and chicken. Really, brisket is not in the the book for Tennessee barbecue. People do brisket. We have cows. I do brisket. I like brisket, but I respect that about what he does. He's like, this is what I grew up doing. This is what I know how to do.
Yeah.
And so I'm just going to do this thing. And he has a line out the door, so it works for him. But it's insane to me to say, I'm from Kansas City and you don't have burn-ins, so your barbecue can't be good. Well, there's no logic in it. So, I think probably before, maybe even 5 years ago, I probably fell a little more into that category of like, I'm from, Arkansas or Tennessee or whatever. So fuck Kansas City barbecue or whatever. But I think really, does it taste good? Did they do a good job at what they're doing, their style?
It's very funny to make it territorial in the sense that, of course, it's a certain way, but we have all the information now. Like, it's not that hard it can be done to find out how to make something from a different region and do it well. That is certainly possible with the internet, at least, and get the right temperature and do a little practice and everything else. But the other thing is funny about barbecue being that it sounds so simple, and it kind of is, but it's so much more than just a recipe. It's like, obviously, it's just you get this pork shoulder and you get it to, internally to 208 degrees, and you cook it low and slow at 225. I guess that'd be the standard. That's almost all there is to it, right? In a way, from a theoretical point of view. Yeah,
it's slow cooking meat. Temperatures can vary, seasonings can vary, wrapping, not wrapping, whatever. But to me, so barbecue is simple, but it's not easy, right?
No, it's not easy at all.
You have to really care, right? But the process isn't it's not rocket science, it's not molecular gastronomy with liquid nitrogen or whatever that, making ice cream in a bowl, pouring that shit in or something. It's just putting meat on the pit and cooking it well, but you have to really, really care. And so that's why it attracts. Doing it professionally now and opening this business, it's attractive to me to like say, no, I'm going to care. I'm going to care more than the other guy. I'm going to wake up early and cook the meat fresh that day so that it's the best it can be, and not take shortcuts, not try to figure out how can I make this easy to do. So, cause it's just not easy. So to be the best and to really, the people that have acclaim throughout the barbecue world, there's not really any shortcuts. There's no tricks. You have to really care, I think. So.
And so when you say getting up early, what does that look like to get your pulled pork and brisket and ribs? Pulled pork, brisket, and ribs is what you're doing mainly. What do you do to get them ready for? What you start serving at 5 o'clock or something like that?
It depends on where I'm setting up, but if I'm doing. Say on Tuesdays, usually I'm not cooking today, but Tuesdays I sell outside of American Legion Hall. It's a honky tonk night that's super popular here. And so I start selling ribs around 5 or 6, and the brisket usually is ready around 8 to 9. And so I probably wake up at 7 to get that going. So I like to have the briskets on by 8 or 9 a.m. And I cook at a pretty high temperature relative to what people think. That's another thing about the low and slow, like the 225. I'm finding and reading and researching that in a lot of ways it's totally unnecessary to cook that low.
What do you like the temperature to be? 300? 275?
Man, I rock my briskets 300 minimum almost the whole time they're in the pit. Sometimes I get it up close to 400. Wow. No joke.
What would be what traditionally they would say that's not good because it would dry it out or cook it too fast or what?
They would say that, but so let's say I put a brisket on at 9 o'clock, I might crank up my fire to 375, 400, and it's almost like I'm getting a sear on it and just getting that temperature up. And I use prime briskets, and I end up wrapping my briskets, and they are not drying out.
Yeah,
not even close.
Well, wrapping them helps them not dry out. Then
it does towards the end of the process. It does help them. But as long as you, I mean, I don't know. I know there are people that probably cook briskets in Texas at 375 maybe, and they do them in like 6 hours. And they have some of the best brisket in the world. I've had their brisket.
Well, when you're doing ribs, a lot of time you cook at high temperatures. But if you do it at high temperatures, you have to mop, right? Is that not the idea?
Yeah. So the ribs, and this is difficult on my pit. I cook the ribs on the colder side of the pit. So if I'm running at 350 for my brisket, say, or 325, I do want my ribs to run lower than the brisket. So because they are not going to take as long to cook. If I'm trying to have ribs at 6 o'clock, I'll put them on at noon. Spare ribs, they're bigger, so they take longer than baby back ribs. I'll put them on about noon, and I can get them done. And I wrap those too at like hour 3. I probably wrap them for an hour and a half, and then pull them out of the wrap and let them bark up a little more. And I do mop my ribs too, or I sauce them. So not literal mop, but I sauce them a couple different times throughout the process. But I think. Yeah, I think if you cook the ribs too hot, it's harder to keep those tender and moist for sure. But the briskets have been holding up for me. So
is it more of a feel than anything over time? It's less scientific, but you get in a pattern and a groove. But it's just you just have to have enough repetitions.
Yes.
Just to figure it out, and it's different for where you are, ambient temperature, your own smoker, all that stuff. All those variables keep changing. So.
Yep, you got to learn your cook. You got to learn your cooker. You got to learn the atmosphere of that particular day, wind, all sorts of stuff can play into it. So, and that's where it goes back to you just have to care. You have to stay on top of it. Keep on it and watch it. So I'm cooking, a big barbecue restaurant that's popular. They probably have a pit room that everything's indoors, out of the elements with, their smokestacks going up through a ceiling or something. But I'm just cooking out in the rain. Thunderstorms, like it's wild. So I think, you just got to pay attention and know what you're looking for. I use a meat thermometer for the brisket, but nothing else. So the ribs and pulled pork or chicken is just all feel for me.
Well, that's good, dude. So what do you mean by feel? You just mean you think it's done? Because on pulled pork, for instance, if you stick a fork in it and twist it and it's ready. If it starts falling apart, it's good to go. Yeah, that's one way to look at it.
I go for the bone.
The shoulder bone. Yeah, you can pull it.
If I can pull it out, there, I'm good. The ribs, I can usually look at them and tell if they're done by how much the meat has shrunk off the bone. And then pick them up and kind of move them and see how they're.
Oh, if they crack when you bend them, if they crack. Yeah.
So it would be a hard thing. I try to think of, okay, one day if I get a restaurant, I'm gonna have to teach somebody how to do this, and it terrifies me because the idea of finding somebody to care as much as you care, and then being a good teacher. I don't know if I can even do that. So
I think in a lot of the barbecue places they don't. I mean, the guy running the good barbecue places around the country are just people like you that are they're the ones getting up at 5 every morning in Austin and doing it. That's what they love, kind of thing. And that's the same thing I say is about guitar or music's the same way. It is impossible, or I've never heard of it. I can't imagine it being the case. Or if maybe professional sports would be this way too. It's very amazing to be on top of the game and to be a professional and be able to earn money. Like that's rarefied air for cooking or sports or music to be able to earn money. However, it's lucrative. It's good. It works. However, it's impossible to take the approach from zero to success with the idea of making money or becoming a professional in mind. That is never going to be the motivation that gets you from one to the other. Like you can't say it would be a horrible use of your time and resources if you wanted to earn a living to put in what you'd have to put into guitar playing. Like think about if you thought of every time you practice guitar as work, as an investment toward a goal of a profession. It would be a horribly spent with unbelievably high risk. low likelihood of success. And if you thought of all those hours as work hours toward your career, from the time you first starting to get your fingers to make a G chord or a D chord, that's just ridiculous. It'd be like, it's like saying I'm going to put 10,000 hours in according to Malcolm Gladwell's book. And I think a guy tried to do this one time. I don't know if he's done with the experiment yet. He said, well, if the 10,000 hour thing is true, I'm going to become a professional golfer. I've never played, but I'm going to do 10,000 hours of golf as an experiment and see how good I get. But that, of course, would never work. And nobody would ever have the motivation to get good enough to be successful if their motivation was simply to be successful and not because they enjoyed freaking playing the guitar or sitting by the smoker all day. So you're never going to hire somebody and say, I'll train you. I'll just tell you how to do it. Can I pay you $20 an hour? That person will never be good at it. They can't be. If that's all they're trying to do is be paid to cook barbecue. Yeah. It's an art in that regard, I would say.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've been running and putting off the idea of trying to cook food professionally for a living. Because I cooked, quick background, I started cooking in restaurants in Louisiana when Ad Cities Burn stopped touring full time. Because I got turned on to cooking, and I was like, I'm going to go get a job at a restaurant. So I walked in and lied, basically said I want to go to culinary school, which wasn't even true. I was like, I'm just going to see what happens. But I got really turned on to it, and then did that for a few years, ended up having one stint at a restaurant with a couple very, very good chefs that taught me an unreal amount of just cooking knowledge that I just took from there and built on it at home and continuing to learn and stuff. So even barbecue, like, the thing how people are like, oh, you're such a good cook, you should start a restaurant, and it's just such a terrible idea.
Yeah.
Like most people that anybody's ever said that to is an awful, awful, awful idea.
Yeah.
So,
well, there's multiple things from the skill to the actually doing the business part of it and all that other stuff. It's not even related. Plus, it seems like it's one of the worst business. It probably is very similar, the more I think about it, to music, as in, that's a terrible idea to do is for professionally. I mean, you're not going to make it, and restaurants only fail except for a few. And same with bands. They don't work. If you think it's fun, absolutely. Other than that, don't worry about it. Don't do it.
Yeah, it's not something to encourage, for sure.
And especially to make somebody say, you're pretty good at guitar. You should drop out of school and try to do that professionally.
Yeah. Well, also the gap between cooking something in your kitchen at your house and then trying to do 100 of those for people that are giving you money. Yeah, it is a far, far gap. So, and the only reason I feel comfortable doing it, jumping right in with the barbecue thing. And honestly, I don't even have that much experience making barbecue. I read about it. I eat it. I just know I have a natural understanding of cooking and flavors, and I just figure it out. But if I had never cooked in a restaurant before or worked as a line cook or anything, and I started this barbecue thing and trying to sell people food and just logistically, I'd be totally fucked.
I know.
Like, putting out food fast, like it'd be a nightmare. So,
like I said, I can't even manage cooking for 4 of my own grill, and I've done it 1,000 hours, and I still mess it up half the time. Especially the logistics, like you said, is one of the worst parts. Do you have to get your smoker out to location and sit there all day when you're going to cook at 5, or do you tow it after you started?
What I'm doing. Some days I start at home and then tow it, at a point in the day where I feel comfortable that I can go out and the meat's at a certain point and I'll go finish it there and get set up and stuff. But there's a cigar shop I set up at, the Smoker's Abbey in Nashville. And Friday, for instance, I will do lunch and dinner there. So I'll pull the smoker out there at 7 a.m. and just smoke all day.
What can you get ready by lunch?
The only thing I can do for lunch, and this is, so I was talking about shortcuts earlier. This is not a shortcut as much as a repurposing. There's hardly anything that is good to do with leftover barbecue, but you can do chopped meats work really well for leftovers, right? So I could cook a brisket on Thursday and reheat it on a Friday for lunch and do chopped brisket sandwiches. That's the only, it's delicious. It's the only way to make brisket really good again the next day. Yep. Same with pork. You could cook a pork shoulder. If you haven't pulled it yet, it holds up pretty good, reheating the next day and pulling it. But if you've already pulled some of it, the only way to really bring it back to life is chop it up in some vinegar, and you have a chopped pork sandwich, and it's really good. So those are the only things, other than like a smoked chicken salad sandwich. I can also do that. There's a couple things that I will do where I don't cook them that day. But if I'm doing the premium good barbecue stuff, sliced brisket, ribs, stuff like that, it has to be that day. So I can't, if I want to have brisket ready for lunch on Fridays, which I may get to this point where I'll have to do this, I'd have to get up at 3 a.m. or 2 a.m.
Right. Yeah, and they do that at a lot of places. Yeah, if you have a big business and you want to serve lunch, that's what you got to do.
Franklin Barbecue in Austin, which is the most popular barbecue restaurant in the world. They have like a 4-hour line. It's insane every day. But their pits run 24 hours a day. But they're going through 4,000 pounds of meat every day too.
Oh my gosh.
Like 2,000 pounds of brisket every day and more on the weekends. So like their briskets, I have his book, and then I've watched a bunch of videos with him. You know, they pull their briskets off the pit at 2 a.m. every day, and they rest until lunchtime, and then they hold them in a holding chamber.
Whoa.
And then at like 3 a.m. is when they get their ribs and turkeys and stuff like that on throughout the rest of the morning. And then the new batch of briskets goes on at noon while they're serving lunch. So, but their fires run 24/7.
Wow.
So it's insane. So they always have somebody there. Their shifts are like somebody comes in at 2 a.m. to pull briskets. So.
Well, let's do sauce. There's a lot of debate on what kind of barbecue sauces there are. They're both regionally and just what people like. But anytime I bring that up to anybody, they seem pretty astonished here in Seattle when I explain to them what I think barbecue sauce is and should be. Because here's what they think it is in Seattle. Basically, KC Masterpiece smoke-flavored ketchup is what they think barbecue sauce is.
I saw there's an interview with the pitmaster recently. I can't remember who it was, but they brought up sauce, and he's like, it's just flavored ketchup. We have it, but I don't know why anybody would want it. Yeah. So sauce is goofy. The only time I care about sauce is if I'm eating a sandwich, because to me a sandwich is like a composition of ingredients. So yeah, I want some bread, I want some meat, a sauce, some slaw, like a pork sandwich, or pickles and onions on brisket. So I'm okay with it in that context, but it is beyond me why you would get sliced brisket that is perfectly cooked and put sauce on it. So it's akin to putting A1 on a perfectly cooked steak. It makes no sense. So some people think barbecue is defined by you could put pork in a pork shoulder in a crock pot.
Yes.
Cook it in some barbecue sauce. I made barbecue.
Yes. Oh no, that's what I'm saying though. That's what's so confusing about it, and that's the reason sauce is so prevalent and so widely liked, or whatever. The condiment that you get at Applebee's, I'd like some barbecue sauce with my fries. But if you take a pork shoulder, I mean, you can understand why that is. You take a pork shoulder, you put it in a crock pot. Literally, there's recipes like that. You just put a pork shoulder in the crock pot and a whole bottle of barbecue sauce and turn it on, and then come back later and you're eating a barbecue sandwich. And it's just orange, wet. I mean, if you go to the Hard Rock Cafe somewhere and order pulled pork, that's what you're gonna get. It's unbelievable. But can you imagine what that would be if you? So the sauce is the savior there, essentially, because if you didn't have that sauce, that meat is absolutely has nothing. Yeah,
but I just don't even know why. Just don't even bother, Like, just eat a hamburger. Cheeseburgers are great. They take no time to make,
They can be cooked correctly in 15 minutes.
Yeah, cheeseburgers are like the best food ever if they're done good, right? So just why? Why do you want or need shitty, barbecue? Like, I don't understand it. I don't have an explanation for why people think that's even a good idea. Or there's so many ways even to do, take pork shoulder, for instance. There's so many great ways to cook pork shoulder that are similarly easy as doing it in a crock pot that's not barbecue, Like, shredded pork is fine, but
carnitas, or you cook in a Dutch oven, or stuff like that.
Carnitas or Italian pulled pork or something like that.
It's not barbecue because it's not dry smoked, is what you would say.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I mean, obviously shredded pork is delicious. every culture has a recipe for shredded pork, right? But you don't have to dump a bottle of barbecue sauce in there. Just do something different.
Yeah.
So
So the theory there being that if the meat is done well enough, sauce isn't necessary.
that's the theory. Our friend Jay Newman, anytime he always says if he goes to a barbecue place, which he's a little bit of a aficionado, I guess. He's very experienced eating barbecue, and he always says if he goes somewhere and they say, "Do you want any sauce?" He always says, "Do I need it?" Kind of just this accusation, almost like, "Why are you even offering it to me?" I don't ever offer sauce to anybody. I have it, and if people want it, I'm not like not giving it to them or something.
Yeah.
But if I slice some brisket, I don't say, "Here's your side of sauce." I leave it be. If they ask, I give it to them.
Okay,
So.
but in my opinion, and I think a lot of people, obviously most people do like sauce, but that may be because meats aren't that great, but there's some really good stuff. Georgia mustard type base sauce, you know, and here's what people don't seem to understand is there's that thick whatever condiment stuff that you maybe Midwest, maybe Texas, whatever you want to say, is where that originates from. But on the East Coast in pure barbecue country, you have like the thin vinegar. The simplest of sauces would be just a white vinegar with chili flakes in it.
Yeah,
which I love.
Maybe a little bit of brown sugar, maybe.
Yeah. And then from there you can add a little bit of tomato sauce and have a really, really thin red, which I like on the pulled pork sandwich.
Yep, as you go west,
that's kind of like
but
that's like Western North Carolina type of thing there.
Yep, I love vinegar. I love chopped pork with vinegar. Growing up, the only barbecue I grew up until I was 12 years old in Atlanta. My dad is from Charlotte, grew up there. We would only eat barbecue in North Carolina. We never have it in Georgia. And so the only thing I ever knew barbecue to be was chopped pork and vinegar. When we moved to Arkansas, when we moved to Arkansas and it was pulled pork with red sauce on it, tomato based, I didn't even it didn't make sense to me. I was like, what is this? Where is the chopped pork and vinegar? And my dad would explain, well, that's Carolina style. It's the best barbecue on earth. There is no other barbecue.
But he grew up in North Carolina, though. So that's why he thinks.
He'll eat somewhere and be like, that ain't barbecue.
Yeah.
That ain't barbecue. Barbecue is chopped pork and vinegar. I was like, Dad, there's other barbecue. He asked me when I was starting, he said, you're going to do dry ribs, right? And I was like, well, I don't think so. There's another guy in town that does like the best dry ribs in the country. So I don't really want to I want to do something different, not to compete with him. And he's super bummed that I don't do dry ribs. Yeah.
I love the mustard sauce. So lower state of South Carolina and Georgia have a mustard-based sauce. And it's still relatively thin compared to the condiment crap. But it is, I really like that on pulled pork.
Yeah. I dig it. The worst it gets is when you get to the really thick tomatoey sauces.
Oh, yeah.
So that's no good. But I mean, like I said, on a sandwich, I do like a sauce. But probably my favorite sauce on a sandwich these days would be heavy on vinegar with a little bit of tomato base in it, ketchup base, just to sweeten it up a little bit. But
my favorite sandwich of barbecue is at a place and just to show that I'm not snobby about South Carolina regional barbecue, my favorite barbecue sandwich that I like is it's at a place called Oklahoma Joe's. Have you heard of it? It's in Kansas. It's near Kansas City. They have a few of them, and they're largely attached to gas stations, but they're pretty nice. Yeah. They're good joints, but they're kind of hooked up to gas stations, and they have a chopped brisket sandwich called the Z-Man, and it's got a sauce on it, it's got an onion ring on it, and smoked provolone on the chopped brisket sandwich, and it's excellent. And that is totally not anything I grew up with. I took a recommendation from somebody else, Andy Nichols specifically.
Yeah,
who I don't trust for anything, but I went and he's right, and it's an amazing sandwich. I'm not a snob about the regional barbecue either, but that sandwich is terrific.
I mean, Oklahoma Joe's it's super famous. So I've never been up there, but anybody that talks about barbecue or writes about barbecue, it's unanimous that I think I want to say Oklahoma Joe's is the place that everybody says in Kansas City is by far the best.
I think so. I've been to a couple other places they recommend there and had ribs I didn't like, but overall, but that sandwich really, really is awesome.
Now we had on the As Cities Burn tour a couple years ago. Do you remember we got the barbecue in Dallas that I got Bundy to go get?
Yeah.
From Pecan Lodge, which is a very highly rated barbecue spot. I mean, what did you think? Have you ever had anything of that caliber, you think? As far
I,
as the meats go?
there's some effect of when you get barbecue as takeout or to go where you lose a little touch with the location itself.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So we just ate that in the green room, and I really enjoyed it. But there was a presentation problem there. It was just grab stuff out of a tray, piece of sausage or whatever. So I don't feel that experience wasn't burned into my memory profoundly like it is going to the place and or having the experience. So I was eating barbecue in the green room of House of Blues, which I found a little unsettling, to be honest.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It tasted good, but that's not the right. The environment doesn't feel right. I think a barbecue place shouldn't be. Like the room was fancy. I was sitting in. I know that's silly, but I don't like eating barbecue with anything to do with fanciness anywhere around me. I don't like it. In Seattle, they have to try to make barbecue here, but they have to infuse it with bergamot flavors and some special side dish and charge $15 or $16 for it, a sandwich, just to justify the cost of labor. And they don't know, and it just the whole thing throws me off. So I go so far to say I can't even eat barbecue. I want to eat barbecue on a picnic table with a styrofoam cup at a gas station.
Right.
That's where I want to eat barbecue, or outside in Austin where there's dirt on the ground. That's where I need to be to enjoy barbecue personally.
I totally
or my
agree.
backyard.
I mean, do you think people in Seattle, or because I've talked to Cassie about how I love San Diego. I wish I could live there forever. Mm-hmm. Now they don't really have barbecue there. Mm-mm. And I'm like, man, we could move there if I did what I'm doing now. And then I'm already incorporating. I love Mexican food. I love to cook Mexican food. I already incorporate a little bit of that into what I'm doing. I was like, so I could not fusion, but just like tortilla, barbecue tacos and set up a sandwich or something. So I'm like, man, we can move to San Diego. We can do the barbecue. We'll be the best barbecue in San Diego for sure.
But nobody will know or care.
Yeah,
they won't know it's the best. They wouldn't. I don't know.
But you don't think if people get that, they take, because people travel from Seattle to go eat in Texas. They go to South by Southwest. Oh, we ate at Franklin Barbecue, and it was unbelievable. So you think you got to be there?
Well,
it's not the environment.
I'm very surprised about that phenomenon that food doesn't travel well out of its region. There's some effect where there's no pressure on it to be right. So what you have is somebody, maybe one guy who moved. Maybe he's from New Orleans and now he lives in Seattle or San Diego and he started a barbecue restaurant, and maybe he kind of knows what he's doing. But nonetheless, he's got no competition, and there's just no pressure on him to do a really good job there, because people don't know the difference in kind of good and medium good and great. So there's just no reason it's going to be great. There just isn't. It's just without that pressure and without that competition and without thousands of people that already know the culture and the nuance, it's just not great. So it's just like even if you get sweet tea out of the South, they don't know how to make it. You know what I'm talking? It's the same. Like,
wild.
It's not hard to make, but there's nobody there that knows, and the customer base doesn't know, and you don't get any feedback, and it somehow falls apart if it's not part of the culture, basically.
So you think opening a barbecue joint in Seattle that it looks like a gas station would be a disaster?
Probably. They just wouldn't get it. I mean, you'd have to train the whole culture locally. I mean, and it's possible that it could grow. There are some places here that are doing it okay, maybe. But it wouldn't be. It's nothing like trying to open one in Nashville with all the good stuff there and the people that, you know what I mean. The market forces and the pressure really. Even if you moved to San Diego and it was kind of working, I'm not saying it would fail. I'm just saying it wouldn't be that great because your pressure wouldn't be that high. Even your own personal, like, there's something about you caring about it that matters, of course. And then there's also the other people down the street and the feedback from the customers, and knowing that this is serious. Keeping you on top of your game. That's what it requires for anything to be great.
Well, because I've worried a little bit. I'm like, okay, we're in Nashville. There's a lot of barbecue here. There's people doing good barbecue. So I'm like, oversaturation. I don't know. Nashville's also booming. Restaurants open up like every day. But part of me comes back to, but people understand the culture of Southern food here and barbecue. Mm-hmm. So they can come to Nashville knowing, oh, yeah, there's places you get good barbecue in Nashville. Uh-huh. So I think that probably plays in the favor, even though there is a lot of it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, of course.
Culture that is educated and knows.
Like a music scene, right? What are you going to do? Move somewhere where there's no local bands and be one? and be a good
yeah.
one. For what? If there's no culture, there's no scene.
Right.
I mean, you have to be playing with all these other bands and get influenced and people coming out to the shows, and then a great band will emerge. They just will. But you can't just move to a place where there's no band so that you'll be the best one. That doesn't work.
I almost think the more barbecue joints there could be in Nashville, and the less brunch places, the better. The better.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, if there was a street, I started setting up doing the barbecue across the street from another guy who sells barbecue outside a butcher shop. I went over and introduced myself. I said, "Hey, just so you know, I'm going to be over here, but most of my business will be after you're already closed and stuff." And I was sourcing some meat from that butcher shop. Mm-hmm. And they figured out that they're kind of separate. Like the guy, he's kind of partners with the butcher shop. Anyway, the wholesale guy, he called me a couple weeks in. He's like, "Hey, I didn't realize that you were like setting up across the street. We can't supply you."
Whoa.
And I was like, "Oh, okay." And he's like, "I mean, if you ever like move or do it somewhere else, I'd be happy to work with you." In which I'm like, "No, I'm never buying meat from you again." Like,
that's crazy.
It's silly. But and I think he's wrong about this. I think it's good to have another barbecue guy across the street.
I think so too.
It's Pat's and Gino's. Like you don't even have to hate each other, but it creates a culture of like, oh, there's like 2 barbecue joints up the street here.
Exactly, and that's in Philly. Philly Steaks, Pat's and Gino's are across the street, and then Jim's is downtown. But anytime it comes up, everybody that you're with is, "Oh, you crazy? Pat's is better. Oh, Gino's is better because they chop the meat up, whatever it is." Yeah. That's good for every. That just means people are engaged. It's the same thing that makes, it's probably the same thing that drives controversy in the news and the media. And we put a CNN panel with 4 people arguing. At least it's happening. It's something. It's moving. There's opinions. It's stirring people and it just makes stuff go.
Even so, when I set up the cigar shop, within a mile of each other, there are 4 people selling barbecue at that time. There's the guy across the street. Mm-hmm. There's Edley's Barbecue, which is down the street, which they have like 3 locations. They just crush, like so many people eat there. And then there's G's Barbecue, which is like a older black dude who is not always open. Like you don't know when he's going to be open. He just kind of shows up and will turn on the open sign. But that's all within half mile to mile. The G's, me and the other guy are all within a quarter mile of each other. Half mile down the road is the other guy. And I think that's a good thing. I'd be okay if another barbecue place opened up even closer. Like let's make like a barbecue, East Nashville barbecue alley or,
That's
like,
what you'd want.
That's a destination. Like, there's all these barbecue joints in East Nashville.
Madison Avenue, Wall Street.
Yeah,
the Honky Tonk Strip. Of course.
Exactly. Yeah, you think Robert's Western World cares that Tootsie's is next door?
No, they're glad.
It's good. It's good for everyone. So I don't really understand the being bummed that there's another guy setting up across the street. If anything, be better. If that's, do what you got to do. Make better barbecue than me.
That's a rule not a rule, but it's a guideline for anything. I mean, you want to be around the best, more stuff. That's just how you get good. I mean, that's just how you be refined. That's just what it is. But so your place is called Magnolia BBQ.
Yep, named after Magnolia, my daughter.
Now, see, that could be a mistake, and I'll tell you a story about why that is. This is funny. This is true though. In the 80s, my parents built a trailer park in South Carolina, developed one. Just the land. They bought the land and turned it into a thing where you could do lots and developed and all this. And they built roads because my dad did site work and not landscaping, but site work and earth moving and paving and grading, stuff like that. And so they didn't have the roads, and they were naming the roads. So they were going to name the roads Matt Lane and Emmy Avenue and stuff like that. And then then they said, "Hang on a second." And at the last minute before they did it, they said, "Let's not name these trailer park roads after our children." And so they didn't. So they came up with alternate names. And at the time, I was bummed because I was like, this is going to be – I was probably 8 or something. But I remember it because I would go play in the dirt there and do everything. I thought, I'm going to have a street named after me. I was so excited about it. But I'm glad I'm not the name of a trailer park. So maybe your barbecue does really well, but maybe it does bad, and you could bring shame upon your name and your daughter's name. So I don't know.
Maybe.
But I think you have a better chance of it being less shameful than the trailer park in my family built.
Yeah, hopefully. Maybe she'll hate it one day. I don't know. Right now, she loves it.
Okay, so let me give you the scenario.
place. That's what she thinks.
Yes. Now, here's the scenario. I just thought of the scenario where it goes bad for her. In the future, animal rights, vegan, PETA kicks in. Let's just say a decade from now, you're some mogul in the, and you're involved in big meat lobby. And meat is opposed by 90% of the culture, and you're a bad guy. You're the Roger Ailes of barbecue in the future, kind of thing. And your daughter is a vehement, super liberal animal activist, and she's got her name attached to your freaking barbecue joint where you're just slaughtering pigs all day. You see? So
I will have failed as a parent if she ends up that way. I can tell you that. So that would be a massive failure on my part. So.
Well, thanks for talking about barbecue today, because I enjoy talking about it, and I'm going to get back at it and go grill. I'm going to get my smoker out. It's in storage, and I'm going to do some cooking very, very soon now that the weather's good. What do you have, a Facebook? How do people know how to find your joint if they're in Nashville traveling or local?
Yeah, Instagram's probably the best because I post there constantly.
Magnolia BBQ on Instagram?
Yeah, it's Magnolia. Magnolia, I always forget the actual handle. It is...
well, you got
Magnolia BBQ. It's Magnolia BBQ.
Okay, I had it right. Magnolia BBQ on Instagram. You can figure out where you're going to be and what's going on. Oh, and the last thing, you just bought that. You just got a truck, a trailer.
Oh, we're about to get real legit. So I'll say this. I put it on the internet. Who cares? What I've been doing isn't strictly legal,
which I admire.
the way I've been setting up, and I was super stressed about it before we started, and then I was like trying to figure out, okay, 'cause we don't have any money. We're just poor.
Yeah.
Like I don't have money.
Which goes along with barbecue. I mean, it's even if you want to throw in a history nugget there, they would say it's always been the cuts thrown out by the elites that the peasants is peasant food,
Yeah. So I was stressing out, and I was talking to people like, okay, let's start a barbecue joint. Let's get an investor. And then it was just like, what am I doing? Just screw it. I'm going to buy a pit. I found a really good deal on a pit, and I'm just going to set up a table and start doing it. And I have friends that own this cigar shop, and then the Legion Hall came up. And so the past few months I've been trying to figure out, we talked about this on the bus a lot, how to get legit. And so I found a really good deal on a camper that has been converted into a concession trailer, and it is very, very awesome. It's 24 feet. So I have a rig. I got a rig now.
Wow.
I got my rig.
And so you'll cook you'll have the smoker and the trailer to serve out of.
Yeah, the trailer you got to have to serve out of to be health department compliant.
So you have wash, rinse, sanitize, all the shit you need in there.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to buy a truck in Kentucky today whenever we get off here.
A truck?
Yep, I got to get a truck.
I thought you were poor. I mean, in fact, I'm sure you're poor.
I am poor, but me and you had to talk about some ideas about how to get it going, and so I won't go into details on the internet, I guess, but I didn't rob a bank. I legitimately got some money to borrow, basically.
Well, tell me where offline, where you got the money, because you're on a spending spree. I like it.
No, I found an insane deal on this trailer. I'm doing really good. My smoker was insanely cheap. The trailer is absolutely nuts. If you ever go on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace, look at concession trailers and look at how much they cost that are health department ready, and it's absolutely out of control.
And what's the truck?
The truck, it's a Ford F-150 that just has the right tow package that I need, and V8, and we'll get the job done. I drove this thing that I bought last night out in the middle of nowhere, Tennessee. I drove it 90 miles home with the Volvo. Now, the Volvo has a V8. It can pull it. But every time a semi-truck would go by, I thought I was about to lose control.
You get the Jimmies?
Oh, yeah. It was terrible. Worse than any van and trailer I've ever. The Volvo just sits too low, too thin. So the truck
wheelbase is too narrow.
Oh, yeah. It was awful. So scary. But I made it home. We blew a tire on the trailer. But I got to get but it's dual axle. So get that out to the trailer shop today or tomorrow. Get new tires on there. Anyway. I'm high right now, like super high on where we're going. So we're gonna paint it, make it look good. So it's hard to come on.
You keep saying we. You mean
me and Cassie?
You and Magnolia, I figure.
Yeah, me and Magnolia. Magnolia's gonna paint it. So it's kind of hard to promote like a stable, stationary type of business where all these people on the internet might be watching. It's like, well, if you're in Nashville, check it out, I guess. But Magnolia BBQ. So come on.
Well, at this rate, everybody in the country is going to live in Nashville soon, so don't worry about that. There's plenty of people in Nashville.
Yep, for sure.
All right. Well, thanks for talking today, everybody. Go to Magnolia BBQ on Instagram, and thanks. We'll talk about some other stuff another time. Appreciate it.
All right. Later.